and welcome to today's joint COOLSPIRiT Nimble webinar. My name is Steve Walker. I work in the UK as a technical channel manager for Nimble. I'm joined today by Alex Raven from COOLSPIRiT. We plan to run through an overview on Nimble today, and specifically how InfoSight is helping customers reduce the risk to managing their data. So the presentation today should last around 45 minutes. So we should have some time at the end for any questions, if there is any. If you do have any questions, please fire them into the chat window. And before I go through the Nimble presentation, I'm just going to hand it over to Alex to introduce himself and to COOLSPIRiT. Morning, Alex.
Morning, Steve. Thanks, Steve. And thanks to everyone for attending and taking the time out to attend this webinar. As Steve said, I'm Alex Raven, Brand Strategy Manager here over at COOLSPIRiT. If you're not already familiar with COOLSPIRiT, I'd like to just quickly introduce our company. We are a value-added reseller with our head office in Derbyshire and office in London and Glasgow. Since 1998, we have specialised in the performance, protection and preservation of your data, which encompasses data management, data storage and data centre infrastructure. As you can see on this slide, this has led us to offering a complete end-to-end service to our customers. From storage and compute, backup and restore, and security, we offer a host of solutions for any project, with complete services wrap including project management and professional services. In 2012, we brought Nimble on board within our storage portfolio. This has proved to be a huge success, helping many of our clients realise the benefits of the technology. We're actually a gold partner with Nimble, only one of a handful in the UK. You may have heard recently that HP have now acquired Nimble. This is something that very much excites COOLSPIRiT moving forward, as we've worked with HP for many years and know them really well. And on that very brief introduction, I'll now hand you back over to Steve, who will introduce the technology further over the next 45 minutes.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate that. Thank you. So, just a quick background for anyone who's not aware of Nimble Storage. So we are a predictive flash storage technology, which came around in the early 2008. We provide flash-based data storage that is fast, rich in services, and flexible to scale from very small to petabytes. We also leverage telemetry data from our arrays with cloud and big data analytics to provide InfoSight. And this webinar today will go into really how InfoSight provides a different way to managing your data in your environment. This success really since 2008 resulted in HP acquiring Nimble earlier this year, as Alex mentioned. So it's really exciting times ahead. A quick point on the slide is that we're seen as, well, I think on this point is to focus on is the fact that we are leaders in the Magic Quadrant for Gartner in such a short period of time shows, real success in what Nimble's been able to do, and also the incredible NPS score of 85. So for those people who aren't aware, NPS or Net Promoter Score is an independent way to validate how customers feel about their experience with a technical vendor. And 85 is a score to be very proud of, and InfoSight is a foundation to how we achieve such a great score. So before we do that, we're going to go through an overview of Nimble Technology. So I'll just go through the key. So Nimble's ethos is about reducing the complexity to managing storage. So we essentially make storage management invisible. How we do this is through these 4 key areas. So we essentially provide massive performance and scalability. We provide rich data services, and also we allow that flexibility of scale and proactive wellness through InfoSight. So if I build out this information here, really the key things is that the simple aspect of how we provide the performance is that we have a very app-centric way of how we manage data in our environment. So, and it's very simple to be able to manage a Nimble array. And there's no sort of configuration of tiering or pooling. It's very simple, and that really makes things a lot easier to managing your environment. The fact that the way that Nimble is designed, it's really designed independent from a point of when you need to scale for performance or capacity, there's no link between the two. So we scale through the amount of CPU in the Nimble arrays, and that means that we can really scale very, very flexibly, whether it be upwards or scaling out completely non-disruptively. And essentially, as your environment grows, you can incrementally scale that environment. The fact that with Nimble OS we have such core features that Nimble customers really take advantage of. The fact that we have non-disruptive upgrades, the core actual RAID in the array is triple RAID, so that gives this verified 6 nines availability. And the rich features of snapshotting with no performance penalty, being able to restore from those very, very quickly, and also then replicate, clone, and then also other features such as encryption and QoS. And the last part is really, why customers love Nimble is really all about the fact that InfoSight as well provides this reduction in risk to managing your data in that environment. And this particular presentation will go into this in much more detail. So all of these components really make it that from a point of consumption of data and storage, it becomes a very, very easy way of being able to provide that. And we say this idea of being simple to consume is really key to how Nimble is being successful for all of our customers. So here's a quick look at the Nimble's platforms today. So at the top, we have the Nimble's all-flash array systems going from the AF1000, 3000, all the way up to the 5 and 7, and ultimately to the 9000. And then we have, at the bottom of the screen, we have the original adaptive or hybrid arrays that we initially came to market with. Now you can see on both of those particular products, they have the same sort of performance figures. They both start around 35,000 IOPS, and they all scale up to similar scales of performance. Obviously, with the 9000, we have a little bit more performance from that system. But fundamentally, the way that we scale, it's all due to the amount of CPU in our particular arrays. As you scale up the range, you essentially get more cores as you go up, and that then allows us to then provide more performance. I think the key difference between these two arrays is that the all-flash array has a guaranteed performance and latency. The adaptive is designed still with amazing performance, but at a lower cost point. It will provide, up around the 95% of what the all-flash array can do. We've just brought to market a new platform called the secondary flash array. So this is a new hybrid array to provide a target for backup data, as we've added a continuous inline dedupe to the SFA to optimize backup data. And one of the key differences with the SFA is the ability to use data from this backup repository. As it's using Flash with the Nimble operating system, we can then essentially provide real performance from that backup device, which typically is not seen out there in the field with traditional systems. Oh, sorry. So what we can see here is really a comparison of where all of our products sit. So we have the actual SFA series is positioned really to target backup data where you need a higher effective capacity because you're going to have lots of duplicate data, and that's really where it suits well to get that that particular type of data. Whereas then at the other end of the spectrum, where you need that guaranteed performance and optimized for performance, that's where you're going to see the AF really driving that value for providing that workload. And then in the middle, you've got obviously the adaptive array, which can really cover off most of the bases. So this allows the flexibility to have Nimble OS talking on all of these systems. So we have the ability to replicate and have the functionality, and also have InfoSight really manage these arrays in the same way as they do across all of our platforms. So this is really where we're going to talk about InfoSight and what's the real value around how InfoSight provides a different way or a different approach to managing your storage compared to how traditional systems have been done in the past. So when we see this sort of issue, you can call it the spinning wheel of death. You're looking at trying to use an application, whether it be a personal app on your laptop or on your mobile phone, and essentially this can cause a lot of problems. And usually, what the problem may be is there's an application that's having issues within an infrastructure, and the complexities that happen in that will mean that not having been able to access that data can really drive pain in an organization, and ultimately it can be a loss of revenue if it's a competitive market. And the problem is that there's multitude of layers of configuration and complexity that could be causing all of these issues. So from the situation from a sysadmin, if you think about it from the day of the life of an IT sysadmin, aka a tech firefighter, what ends up happening is IT is constantly reacting to unexpected problems, meaning endless firefighting and wasting time. So what they tend to do there is when there's a problem, they will have an unexpected situation, and then as an IT admin, the first thing you start to do is use your own analysis tools that you have to be able to try and identify that problem. That could be graphs, it could be logs in the system, but essentially there's some monitoring tools that you may have that will then allow you to be able to try and collect, stitch and interpret dozens of information to understand what is happening. And sometimes it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. And then when you come to that point, and you've not resolved it, the next stage it would be to then start calling your vendor support. And actually, that you'd think that would take less stress out of the equation, but in many cases it actually adds more time and more pressure because of the process associated to how a traditional vendor support is managed. Because as soon as you call that vendor, it can make things worse as you start to ask those, or you're being asked some mundane questions that keep getting escalated and triaged through certain systems, and sometimes it can become the situation where you see finger pointing between different people, and an issue that can take days to the right person, weeks even to resolve. It can be a huge pain to the organization, or even worse, you call and then after that time period you hear we have a patch for that. Thanks for telling me, because that would have been, could have easily been proactively dealt with as opposed to allowing this particular pain to happen. So if you look upon it in terms of the way that the comparison of how the motor industry is today, this is where we see how transportation is full of situations that can cause problems. You're driving along on the motorway and there's an accident. It could be someone driven into the back of somebody or whichever that's happened. But fundamentally, the situation will be is that when this type of thing happens, it can ground everything to a halt. Now, when you look at how the industry is changing in the automobile industry, is that there is a key way of being able to try and utilize technology to improve how transportation is being delivered. So now, when you look at in the not too distant future, there's three key technology enablers. One, there's more and more data from cars. Two, there's cloud-based analytics to understand all of that data. And three, there's cars are learning from each other's experiences, locations, accidents. So we can easily imagine a future where there's self-driving cars that set that destination without any headaches. And we see the same for that in terms of with infrastructure. The fact that infrastructure is complex with many, many failures means that as IT has always had to deal with those problems and stress, that these three key areas that we mentioned on the previous slide there, of rich telemetry, cloud-based analytics, and global learning, is really how we've been able to, for the last 7 years, drive a different way of support for our customers. So how we do this is through these parts. We have a cross-stack telemetry, which allows us to transform how infrastructure is managed. You need data, but you also need the right data. And data from storage vendors has always been limited to log files and graphs on obvious metrics, or manually collected after an event. But for us, we take a much more comprehensive view on data collection. So every second, InfoSight is collecting thousands of embedded sensors in every array, and it's collected from our install base. So we're also pulling in data from across the infrastructure for complete cross-stack telemetry. We're collecting around 250 billion sensors, 2 billion log events, hundreds of millions of configuration variables every day, which works out to some crazy figure of something like 350 trillion data points we've collected since 2010. The other part is really the fact of then using cloud-based predictive analytics. So InfoSight continuously analyzes these sensors from over 10,000 Nimble customers to generate cloud-based predictive analytics and deep health and performance insights about your environment. And then really it's then about this global learning, and InfoSight is learning from that collective data and experiences in the whole of the install base. So what does this then allow us to achieve? So we're able to overcome the complexity and eliminate the anxiety brought in by infrastructure. So the first part is we're predicting and preventing problems. Our goal is not just customers' analytics that show you a problem and resolve it, but utilizing the power of our global connected install base to prevent customers from having problems. And InfoSight analyzes the install base. It's predicting and preventing in every customer's environment. And if it uncovers a problem, it proactively resolves it. And these are problems that exist outside the storage. Even, for instance, we prevented thousands of systems experiencing network issues, server issues, even hypervisor issues. Second point is really that InfoSight sees what others can't. We provide clear insights up and down the infrastructure stack across the environment in the past and into the future. Traditional monitoring tools, they cause more trouble for customers. It creates more questions than answers. And if you're trying to determine the root cause of a performance hit, they can try and, they also have to try and then put their own interpretation on those tools. Instead, what we do with InfoSight is we've embedded that data science and machine learning to give the right answers to the systems that we have, and utilizing the cloud, it gives us a far more efficient way of being able to deliver that. And thirdly, it's really the fact that with InfoSight, we're delivering a transformed support experience. So one that you actually like. So InfoSight automates the tasks handled by a traditional level 1 or level 2 support staff. So this allows Nimble to build a support organization made up of level 3 experts. So in the small chance that you do need to call support, in less than a minute, you're directly through to a level 3 expert who can quickly resolve the problem and also has all your data readily within their fingertips in InfoSight. So it's something that from a resolution perspective means that we can resolve problems really, really rapidly compared to a traditional model. So let's just go through the overview of the capabilities of InfoSight. So if you look about the way that traditional monitoring happens, this is not what InfoSight does. So we deliver a prescriptive insights way beyond that typical way. One of the big limitations with monitoring is that it just creates more questions. So, should I be concerned of a problem? Is it actually a problem there, and what's causing it? How do I actually fix that problem as well? Whereas with InfoSight, we apply data science and machine learning to give customers the answers they need. So they don't have to try and interpret graphs and logs or anything like that. So as an example, instead of trying to provide just a typical latency curve, we can tell you the real impact of that latency and the actual underlying I/O issue. So it's really about having this red or green light option of understanding where the impact is what InfoSight can deliver. So if a problem impacts the I/O path, then we're resolving it. Even if there's not the storage that's happening, a key aspect to performance diagnostics is having a complete view of the infrastructure environment and being able to correlate the storage with other parts of the environment so we can diagnose those issues at the right place. So take the instance of latency. It's easy to monitor and identify where there is excessive latency, but diagnosing that root cause, be it the host, the network, the VM, that's the challenge. And being able to do that efficiently and effectively is really key, especially when there's problems in your environment. So this is where InfoSight really gives that ability to do root cause analysis very, very quickly. Also identify when there's a noisy VM that's hogging all the resource, a noisy neighbor as it's known, being able to identify that, and also who else is impacted from that particular contention. Great thing that InfoSight provides is also looking at, well, you have potentially applications in your environment that actually take in resource, but there's no activity on that particular VM or that particular application. And being able to go back to the business and say, well, why are they there? Can we actually repurpose that? Is another value that we can deliver and give the ability to identify that with real proof. And the last point there is really then is that, when we see issues, we can clearly show where that is. So you're not just throwing resource into an area and hoping it's going to resolve those performance problems. So take an instance of, as I said before, the VM latency. We can see how a traditional system just looks at that particular time series and will say, well, where is the actual problem? Whereas with InfoSight, we can actually look at a problem and see exactly where those particular latency problems are. So we can see where it is, and also in the cases where the latency is coming, is it from the host? And then drill in further and see, actually, in this particular environment, we're seeing a VDI application that's taking all of that resource and causing these particular spikes in this circumstance. So then you can then start to identify it and really be able to minimize the impact on the rest of the actual environment. We can also identify, well, InfoSight allows us to then look at the storage and see a primary factor to that latency. So it could be the case that it's a problem, or it could be the case that it's not a problem. And the analytics is being able to show exactly what that problem may be. So in this circumstance, we're seeing latency spikes, but actually the primary factor is it is a backup large block operation. So this particular situation is not a latency sensitive scenario. So InfoSight is intelligent enough to know actually the impact on here is low, therefore they're not going to raise this as an actual issue. So it's that intelligence that the data science allows us to do through the algorithms means that we can actually give a real impact or predict the real impact to that latency and tell the admin when to pay attention to it. Another part is that we actually start to take the guesswork out of planning your environment. So InfoSight accurately predicts future capacity, performance, bandwidth needs, completely independent and looking through an application by application model, so that we can forecast very, very accurately the statistics from the system and confidently give use real clear recommendations using auto-regressive and multi-color simulations, taking in account regular patterns that are considered by the untrained eye very, very unpredictable. And this is the key to us being able to give this this highly recommended way of being able to plan out your environment. Because what we've seen throughout the time of InfoSight, we've been constantly learning from our install base. So we learn the I/O signatures and performance patterns, and we learn from past support cases. And when we learn when there's a problem in an environment in the install base, we can apply a fix or identify that issue, and then go out and essentially target any other customer who has that particular issue. So you could call it, we're effectively inoculating customers from hitting this issue where we see it once, and proactively go out and deal with any other issue going forward. So what we're saying here is we see it once, prevent it for all, and this means that if we see this problem, we make sure that other customers will not get this problem, or we will go out and deal with it so that they actually will essentially not need to be dealing with a particular problem. Also means that we can actually target customers who have nearly have these problems. So what we can actually go and do is, if they're near enough to those particular issues, say for example they're at a certain version of VMware or Hyper-V, and they've identified a bug, and at the particular version we've identified they're at version 3.2.1, for example, and then by them upgrading to that version within Nimble OS, they would be potentially hitting that problem. What we can actually do is allow InfoSight to target those customers and actually blacklist them from hitting those known problems. So it's all about this, a way of knowing that InfoSight has essentially got your environment back effectively, and can then deal with any of those issues or prevent you from hitting those issues. So now I'm going to talk about really how our support is really, the industry leading, and how we're able to provide a completely different way of doing the support, but means that the actual quality of it is phenomenally high. So we're proud of our, we are really proud of our experience for customers that we've created at Nimble, and our customers love our support. And the analytics is really what's been allowed us to truly create a different experience for customers. As I mentioned before, there's no third or level 1 or level 2 support staff anymore, because essentially InfoSight is automating all of our components. So it opens and closes 86% of cases before customers have even realized there's an actual problem. Then the support engineers have deep expertise in storage, servers, OS, applications, and since InfoSight has already got all this information and the problem in the environment, the root cause for even the most complex of issues gets resolved within 45 minutes typically. And then lastly, it's this idea that you don't have to worry about who to call anymore. When you do have an abnormal issue, because our engineers are proactively investigating them, we're reaching out to you. So what you can see here is really just a further element of what I'm talking about, that we have, a massive value around this analytics enabling this support. Within less than a minute, you're speaking to a level 3 engineer. The satisfaction for customers is incredibly high, and we're able to identify issues, outside the actual storage further up the stack, whether it be for, network or host resource issues, best practice not being followed. All of these elements are really, through InfoSight, allowing us to be able to give this high level quality support that is phenomenal in the industry. And then also it's allowing us to give us this 6 nines measured availability that we see from all of our install base. So how is InfoSight different? So you may start hearing other storage companies talking about predictive analytics, but it's our differences that have made independent analysts say that we're an industry-leading predictive analytics platform. So I want to show really the key things to what distinguishes us from other people out there. So we're constantly architecting the predictive analytics from when we started. So this required taking a fundamental different approach to how data is collected. So formerly, data was limited to that one-off log file with obvious metrics bolted on to collect data after an event. And it's always been analyzed on one array at one time. So when we started, we began to embed software sensors into every module of code in our operating system to understand all of the factors that can impact the I/O path. Today, there's thousands of sensors capturing diagnostic data from our arrays connected across the install base, and we've analyzed more than 300 trillion pieces of data, as I mentioned earlier on this webinar. So from a competitor perspective, to collect a depth of data would require essentially retrofitting that architecture. That would mean going through millions of lines of code, determining where sensors are needed, spend time to design and code sensors. That's not an easy task. That's just to start collecting the data as well. And that's where the years that we've collected already within InfoSight gives us a huge advantage in where we deliver InfoSight compared to the industry. So we also have other vendors will provide point products, whereas we'll actually provide the ability to go beyond the storage. So we're actually providing integration which allows us to collect data and correlate that to other applications further up the stack, whether it be at the compute, the hypervisor, even the network. We're collecting that information and being able to correlate that to give much more insights to where the problems are. And then we're also allowing actually data scientists to experiment with this data effectively and be able to give a different approach to how you're looking for problems and isolating issues using essentially data science to deliver that. And what that means is really the infrastructure is always getting smarter and always learning and being more reliable for us based on this applied data science that we have combined with the machine learning. And it just means that we're essentially giving a much more prescriptive way of being able to give clear recommendations on when there is an issue. So because of all of that understanding that InfoSight provides. So I mentioned before that we've just published the fact that we have measured 6 nines availability from all of our install base. That's not a lab scenario, which is sometimes published when seeing how particular storage systems are created. This is measured from InfoSight, saying all of the availability that we see is now classified as being 6 nines. So we've seen essentially that correlates to about 25 seconds of impact or less per year. So it's a very, very small amount of downtime that we see on average. And it's also because of InfoSight, it's been improving year after year, and it's phenomenally, it's the foundation of InfoSight that has really given us that ability to get to this point of having 6 nines availability. And oh, excuse me, a bit trigger happy there. What it means then is we're essentially being able to provide this getting even better going forward. So the fact that the applied science is meaning that we're able to prevent problems more effectively, learn faster with regards to the install base, and then prevent those known issues from any customers, and then being able to solve those problems that are in the storage or even beyond the storage. So I'll give you some examples now in terms of where we are in terms of scenarios that could happen or we see typically in from dealing with issues. So InfoSight, as one example, we actually saw an impact where there was, it detected that a controller had gone down unexpectedly. So there was no data loss because there's no single point of failure in that Nimble array. But we actually identified that problem, and then the engineers created a fix, and it was pushed out within a day. And then we used InfoSight to then look out in the field and identified, in this case, there was 40 other customers who were automatically stopped from hitting that particular issue. So we saw it once, and we fixed it for the rest of the install base based on that one issue. But then there's also situations where we've actually seen a problem, and it wasn't even related to Nimble. It was actually, in this case, an ESX issue where there was some illegal iSCSI handling, which was causing lots and lots of higher throughput, but also causing higher latency, and then making that system unusable. So we identified that problem, and we actually worked with the vendor to fix that bug, and then utilized InfoSight to target. In this case, we identified 600 systems that were vulnerable to that problem, and we essentially blacklisted them so that they did not hit that issue. So it's this proactive way of being able to deal with that and maintaining our customers' availability to accessing that data. And really, it's not just going to stop here in terms of with InfoSight. The traditional way before InfoSight was, it's all about, if a component fails in that system, then obviously something may happen in terms of being able to get, a disk to site to replace that. But really, what InfoSight's been able to do is change the way of that original model and use cloud-based analytics and machine learning to provide this predictive and prevention of problems. But going forward, we see this only improving it and becoming a far more self-managing environment, which allows customers to be able to take even more risk out of issues and be able to provide much more insight to how your data is being managed. So I think that is the actual slide deck. So we've come to just around nearly 40 minutes on this particular deck now. So Alex, I don't know if you wanted to cover off what COOLSPIRiT were talking about in terms of the workshop that you had potentially for anyone who was hosting or on this particular webinar.
Yeah, that's it, Steve. No, that's it. So thanks very much for going through those slides. Yeah, absolutely. For anybody attending this webinar, you may have noticed when you signed up that we're offering an Amazon voucher for your attendance, so we'll make sure we get those out to you. But also we're offering you the opportunity for a free storage workshop with one of our experts. So in this workshop, the guys will spend a day with you going through, or as much time needed, spend a day with you going through what you've got today, what your pains are, what you're trying to fix, and then advice from there. Essentially, that's it. It's just an advice day, a free of charge advice day. So if you'd like to take that opportunity up at all, then when I send you over the Amazon voucher, just give me a reply and we can arrange and get something in the diary for you. But I think, Steve, we'll move on to the questions next, shall we?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to go to the questions now in the Q&A. Just bear with me 1 second. I'll just stop sharing and we can see where the Q&A is. So there's a question here. So it says, do you offer on-site physical arrays and also cloud-based offerings? So it's a great question there from somebody. And so yeah, we do have originally our arrays. We have physical arrays that customers have on-site in their data centers, which allow them to obviously serve data. We've actually just also released a service called Nimble Cloud Volumes. So this is it's currently in beta, but it's rapidly being developed now, and this allows you to actually present block storage in both Amazon, AWS, and also in Azure, and it's allowing you to be able to have this ability to move data from on-prem and effectively get it to the cloud, and then also then be able to not be locked into any particular of those cloud providers. So we do have both options, where we have the physical arrays where you have it on site, and then also get to move to one of those hyperscale providers. We also have many service providers also using Nimble as a particular platform, and using it for a cloud in that sense. The other question I can see here is we're seeing secondary storage needing more IOPS than the SFA series provides when running backups to be able to run enough parallel streams to finish overnight. Interesting question, actually. So the way that we see the Nimble SFA is, yeah, it does have enough performance to be able to drive most typical workloads for providing the amount of throughput for finishing those backups. Also, a lot of these backups will be run in a sort of incremental or reverse forward process to be able to only send the block changes during those time periods. So we've not seen issues around the performance based on that, but I'm happy to look at that offline if that's of value. And another question we've got is, how secure is the cloud-based data being collected? So it's all being sent from all via SSL. So, and it's only the metadata that we're actually sending. We're not sending customer data that's in that array. It's just the metadata of the software sensors that's being collected. So it's I can provide, if need be, further information on the actual what elements are being sent across. So it's definitely in a secure form, and the metadata more than the actual data that's being sent from the arrays.
I think it's important to say, Steve, we've got everybody's details, so we can get back to you on those questions. We'll email you directly and contact you with any further information. Yeah. Is there any more questions from anybody? I'm not sure I see much more coming in. If there is, let us know. Oh, there you go. I think there's one more now.
It says
oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's it, yeah. Perfect. Yep.
Well, I think if that's the case, then there's no other questions. As Alex said, we've got details. If there is any further inquiries, please reach out to myself or Alex, and we can happily help with any questions around this webinar, or even through anything else related to Nimble.
Thank you, and thank you for everybody's time. Have a great day.
Cheers now, bye.